Devil in a red dress. Call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess. Bang, bang, got my hand on the
There are
trigger.
some other things that kind of disrupt this idea of some continuous or homogeneous continuity or homogeneous continuity. Yeah, this kind of continuous rule. And let us look at what we see here. After the Mongol conquest of China,
Mm-hmm.
the Mongol Empire would start to fracture into the Golden
Mm-hmm.
Horde, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ilkhanate, and the the main part where we have Mongolia now was called the Yuan Dynasty. Now, if you look at the second map here, you can see the Yuan Dynasty was founded around the year 1279. And you can see that
Actually,
this is. Yeah.
December 18th, we know exactly. December 18th, 1271, yes.
Well, what we can see, they declared the Yuan Dynasty was called the Khanate of the Great Khan because it included Mongolia, and they
Right.
moved the capital from Karakorum to Dadu, to I guess be closer to the center because this was the year where they conquered the Southern Song, or when they finished conquering the Southern Song Dynasty.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, just very quickly, how we get there. So after the Han dynasty, we have like three other dynasties. Each of them lasts for about 400 years, which means 200 years of prosperity and then 200 years of decline. Eventually, they just fall, and there is a war when all the lords start fighting between each other, for the privilege of establishing their own new dynasty.
Yeah.
So we have Song, we have Tang, we have Song. I'm missing one
You're
dynasty.
missing Sway before Tang, which lasted for
Yeah,
for a very short time. But the point is that actually you have many different kinds of polities and kingdoms or some kind of states that were striving for power, but Chinese historiography has subsequently, chosen to select some of them and say these are the official ones. you know.
yeah, yeah. Right, correct. So we
Those
have
were the let's say those were the most those are the ones that came out as the most powerful. Those are the official ones. The rest are kind of on the sidelines, not really given the mandate. People learn about them, but they're not that important.
right, right, right. So we have these dynasties. They rise, they fall. There is a war. New dynasties created until 13th century, when the time of the Mongols comes up, and the Mongols just take over whole China, and not only China, Central
Yeah.
Asia, and they stretch their empire to Europe. And here we have this Yuan dynasty that on December 18, 1271, was declared by the grandson uh, of the Genghis Khan,
Yeah.
who was Kublai Khan, and he proclaimed himself a Chinese emperor.
Yes. I mean, why not? They conquered China, so why would not? Why would he not do that?
But he proclaimed himself a Chinese emperor, so it's another Chinese dynasty, as is taught in schools in all around, in every school in China. Everybody knows the name of all the Chinese dynasties: Qing, Han, Sui, Tang, Song. Yuan is the next, so it must be Chinese dynasty.
Yeah, and then, no, but nobody's saying that the people who lived there were not Chinese, or a lot of the administrators, even a lot of the ruling elite were not Chinese. But the point is, Kublai Khan, he declared himself the Chinese emperor because he could, not because he would beg China, can I please be your emperor?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He asked them for permission. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, no, I was just joking. Of course, this is not a Chinese dynasty. This was a Mongolian dynasty. Just the Chinese, if they admit they were ruled by the Mongols, which was basically Yuan dynasty lasted only 80 years, so they would have to they couldn't claim anymore that they have a continuous civilization. How could they have continuous civilization if they were ruled by Mongols, even if it was 100 years?
yes, good point. I think the subsequent justification to this was given by the next dynasty, the Ming dynasty, after defeating the Yuan dynasty in 1368 and coming to power. They would say that now we took the mandate back from the Mongols. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. But some dynasties apparently weren't really Chinese, which means the problem lies, the issue is not who rules China, but what China is.
Yeah, good. That's a good point to make.
It's not important who becomes the next overlord in China, but it is in the territory of China. So he gets adopted by the Chinese history,
Yes, yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
willingly, and becomes Chinese.
Yeah. So,
That's it.
so what exactly is the territory of China? I mean, we've seen that this was the original, right? The area around the Yellow River.
Huh?
To, I think, what a lot of people might imagine the territory of China is, they might look at the Qing dynasty, the last of the dynasties, where which kind of held the same area as modern China. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Although you can see it lost some of its area here in Manchuria to Russia, and some of the
Right.
area in the west, also to Russia, and now to the states in Central Asia, and some other small areas. But for the most part, with the exception of Mongolia, it looks very much the same as present day China. And I think that after the collapse of the Qing dynasty in the year 1911,
Yes.
the successive governments that would come into power, I guess their raison d'être, their justification, for trying to overthrow the Qing was that we will overthrow them, but we will just become a better country, but we will not divide the country up anymore, right? Because if they lose some of the territory, then what was the reason for getting rid of the Qing dynasty in the first place?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now,
Right.
obviously, they lost some areas, most notably to Japan, but they gained this back. But China was not able to reconquer Outer Mongolia, present-day Mongolia, because of the Soviet influence. On the other hand, for some reason, the governor of Xinjiang would eventually join up with the then forming People's Republic of China after 1945. So we're talking about 1949 here. Xinjiang would be integrated, and Tibet would eventually be invaded because the the new socialist government that came to power after 1949 would be able to claim, oh, we are not conquering Tibet anymore, we are liberating them, from serfdom. Whereas in reality, they would just be, taking over the area that Qing Dynasty owned before. And also because, there wouldn't really be anyone to oppose them, right? For example, they wouldn't try to take back Outer Mongolia because, first of all, there would already be a communist party in power there, and that's why this part of Mongolia would be supported by the Soviet Union.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for the quick history. That's very interesting. Yeah, yeah. Let me sum up. Just to go back a little bit. So the Qin are basically related to the Mongols, Jurchen, right?
Not.
They
I wouldn't say they're really related. They are after the uh, before the Mongol Empire. The Jurchens would control the northern part of China. Basically, the Song would hire them to kick out the Khitans, and after they hired them, well, they didn't. The Jurchens didn't go back, but they
right.
would, they would try to expand to the south. But eventually, they would be defeated by the Mongols. So when you come to power, when you are trying to come to power again, maybe you don't want to use the loser's name, right?
Right.
So they would sort of refashion themselves as a new Manchu ethnicity. Also, perhaps to include the other ethnicities around them to sort of better organize themselves, and they would eventually ally themselves with the Mongols and with some of the Chinese warlords to be able to conquer the Ming Dynasty.
Yeah, but they are completely new people. Completely new people
Absolutely different from,
arrive
yeah.
in the territory of the Ming Dynasty because the people were not called Chinese that time. They were called people of I don't know what. People who live
I guess people, the subjects of the Ming Dynasty,
Ming,
of the Ming Emperor.
yeah, of the
Yeah.
Ming Emperor. So completely new people arrive. They defeat the Ming Dynasty. Ming Dynasty, basically the emperor hang himself,
Yeah.
and the rest of the court is chased all the way down to Taiwan. They are seeking some refuge. And meanwhile, the Jurchen, the Manchurians, take a name just to show they have the mandate of heaven and they are
Yes.
the rightful rulers of this territory now. These people that very high shaved forehead and the braided like a ponytail in the back.
Yeah. So they would
Those are
impose some of their own cultural
correct.
preferences
Right.
onto the Chinese population.
What about the language? What about the writing? Did they change the writing? Or did they adopt the current writing that was China already, or the territory of, or the Ming Dynasty people were already using?
Well, think about it. This is so similar with the Mongols. They wouldn't be able to, or they maybe they wouldn't see the reason why to change the writing entirely, right? Because they would just use the Chinese scribes that already live in China, to sort of send their order, carry out their orders. What they did instead, and what the Mongols did as well, was kind of this kind of an intermediate solution where they would use both the Manchus would use the Manchu script, the Mongols would use the Mongol script, along with the Chinese characters, sometimes side by side. Why?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know why they didn't change the writing system entirely. I mean, I think it's because the writing systems were more geared towards the Manchu or the Mongol language rather than towards the Chinese language.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Why?
Everything makes
But
sense.
why
So
didn't they make a more phonetic alphabet at this time? I don't know.
yeah, doesn't matter. So
Because
they
it
just
wasn't
used what was
necessary.
already working, which was the best thing that they could use. So why not to use it?
I guess.
And
Yeah.
like this is saying like because for example Europeans, different countries use Latin script. Does it mean that it's some kind of continuation of the Roman Empire?
That's a good point.
Just because we use your letters, which means you adopted our culture.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Then imagine, Italy, all of a sudden, claiming cultural overlordship over
Yeah,
whole Europe
yeah.
and other
Every time,
places.
every time you go on holiday to Italy, they will smirking and just like like a joking about, you are using our letters, yeah? Or I mean, that would be just ridiculous. Just
Yeah.
So yeah, new people come, conquer Ming Dynasty, the people who live there, establish a new dynasty, and still apparently continuous civilization. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
Nothing changed at all.
Yeah. So
I think it happened to every country in Europe through the last 1,000 years.
yes, but we've seen, how popular it has become in Chinese historiography, to keep this idea of the mandate of having being passed on from whoever is the winner and whoever can claim it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to separate oneself from these very convenient ideas.
Yeah. Ah, okay. So let's talk about the book written by Bill
Let
Hayton,
me
The Invention of China.
move over
It's a bit
to.
psoriasis.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So- Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So 5,000 years of history, which is repeated not only by Chinese but also non-Chinese, by Westerners. This concept, according to Bill Hayton, is a myth. And the reason why China insists on this myth is uh, just to deceive the world that China is uniquely old and
Uh-huh.
deserves special consideration.
So you're saying that if they say, well, we are very old, things take time here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It means yeah, exactly. That's it. No, what the Westerners say when dealing with China, whether trying to turn a profit, or that's what Bill Hayton says, or waiting democratic reforms.
Oh,
The
okay. Uh-huh.
implication is you need to be more patient and just wait a little bit longer because the country has 5,000 years of history.
Yeah,
That's
that's
all.
it. It sounds like a Chinese special theory of relativity. Okay. Well, what about Taiwan? They're inheritors of the same culture. They were able to democratize fairly well by now.
Exactly. Yeah. What about the Taiwanese?
Yeah.
They are not Chinese. China claims they are.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah, but apparently they didn't ask for extra time.
No, that
They
kind
didn't
of
need.
kind of pokes a hole into this whole theory.
Yeah. Apparently things can speed up a little bit if you really want to.
Yeah, I guess they can, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So even Richard Nixon in 1991 said, within 20 years China will move to democracy. He was so wrong. You can't rush them.
Also, he
The
was saying like
Chinese
20
really.
years will be a lot, but they can do it in 20 years. Yeah.
He gave them 20 years in 1991. And he said, you can't rush them. The Chinese look at history and the future in terms of centuries, not decades, the way we do, because they are so much older as a culture. Such a nonsense. It's just like finding excuse for Egypt for anything they do wrong and saying that no, just come on, respect them. They build the pyramids.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't done in a day. So,
Yeah,
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 I see.
unbelievable. They are asking. China is asking for respect and cultural sensitivity because of the long history.
I mean, you can't judge, a country based on its past successes or past failures. You have to judge them according to what they do here and now.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody knows that. You cannot judge anybody according to what your grandfather did.
So, yeah,
You
that's
judge
also a
what
good
you
point.
did. What you did. I don't care what your grandfather or great grandfather did. Probably they were great people, but what about you? What did you achieve? You might be a piece of shit. You might
Yes.
be a piece of shit.
But you see this in
Yeah.
in a lot of totalitarian countries. They want to go back in history and look at take some positives. Look how great we were, or maybe also to look at other countries. Look what bad things they did to us.
Mm, yeah.
So in China, after 1915, this idea of this century of humiliation comes up.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
the
that's another nonsense. Yeah.
sort of implicating that because the Qing dynasty was weak, and other countries who had colonial ambitions at that time, and they were trying to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, it started when, again, after 400 years, as happened with every real dynasty, not the mythological dynasty, every real dynasty, they started, everything started declining, and there were rebellions. People rebelled because they were hungry, they were famine, there were growth in population, but not in a farming land. And the Qing dynasty didn't undergo any industrialization, just like Japan did, for example, and the whole state was in decline.
It's
And
yeah.
that moment, yeah, sorry, that moment, basically China was still trading with Great Britain. There were all the powers around, like Great Britain, Holland, and they were interfering in the business, and Britain, and they were owning lots of money to the British. They were saying the British were trading, for example, tea for opium. There was big addiction to opium. That's why it's called Opium Wars. And Britain just only with a few thousand troops, and because of their technology and because of their more advanced warships, were just so easy to take a port after port, and just force the Qing dynasty to either to pay the money, or just yeah, there were the other superpowers, or the other so-called the eight great powers that arrived in China together, like 45,000 troops, only 45,000 troops facing hundreds of thousands Qing soldiers. And there were countries like the UK, America, Italy.
Yeah, we can
Uh,
see yeah, we can see several of
yeah,
them here. Yeah, luckily
India from the west.
the illustrator wrote down this would be Germany. You can tell by the Stahlhelm. This is Italy. You can again tell by the
Okay,
hat. It's a little funny
all
because
right.
Italy had relatively few troops and interests in China.
Okay,
The UK, a little bit chubby because they would try to take the most land for themselves. And here
because
here
they
is
own them.
yeah,
Yeah,
here is Austria or Austria-Hungary. Also,
Hungary.
just kind of getting ready. Also, yeah, sharpening its scissors on the grindstone because they were unable to take a whole lot.
Austria-Hungary had only 296 troops
Yeah,
there.
it's
Very, very small contingent, like nothing. Yeah.
and you would see the U.S. I mean, the U.S. was not significant in this, but you can also see Russia here and France and Japan is missing here.
Japan is not in this picture.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Japan was there too.
yeah, very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the troops, aside from
Mhm.
British, I mean, at the time of the intervention, going from Tianjin to Beijing would be Japanese and Russian.
Uh-huh. They are carving China, but did they really carve China? Did they divide whole
No,
China? Did they?
they had some few ports, and yes, China did have to open up and um, the other countries demanded some preferential treaties that they would have to that they would be able to trade at better conditions in China. But if you look back in time, you could assign a part of the blame to the Qing dynasty as well. I'm not saying here, that we should blame the victim, but the Qing rulers, I'm sure they had plenty of opportunities to modernize their country. They didn't want to trade with other countries. They were not interested because the other countries, or they said, if we trade, okay, but only for silver. So then the Great Britain would come up with the bright idea. Okay, well then let's sell them drugs. Let's sell them opium. Maybe then we can get some of the silver. You know.
Uh-huh.
So the Qing dynasty kind of failed its population in the fact that they did
Qing
not
dynasty was
keep that they did not keep track of what was going on. They did not keep
they
up with
were
developments around the world.
they were playing their little games and they lost. They were even like encouraging the rebels to fight against these only I don't know 20,000 troops
Yeah.
somewhere, and they lost
Yeah, yeah.
because they were not developed. They didn't have guns. They had nothing. Qing dynasty was just the backwater of the world.
They essentially started at some point. They started thinking, well, we are big, we have our own big empire, Oh, why do we need to deal with some other countries? It's
Right.
yeah. It became
Yeah,
this
correct.
kind of a naive mentality that other
So
countries would
this is
start to
called
exploit at some point.
humiliation. Humiliation. China was humiliated. It implies that all these powers, they were doing something unfair, something they didn't have to do, but they did it, I don't know, just for fun. They humiliated them because they hated them or they were envy or something. They China didn't deserve it. It was so unfair what they did to them. That's what the humiliation means.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was unfair and not very nice, but I mean, this happens in
We are
many,
talking about
many.
90s.
Yes, this happens in many different places all around the world. Throughout different
Exactly. You
points in
become weak.
history. If
You
you
lost territory. If you become weak in Europe, let's say, you would lose a piece of land right away, probably to Prussia or some other.
yes,
And you
or
will lose
Russia.
half the country right away, or Prussia or Russia, one of them for sure. So, so that was totally normal. It was 19th century. It was 19th century.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not talking about.
Obviously, China was not happy with this, but then what can other present day countries say? What is India supposed to say? you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah.
The
So
point
yeah.
is, I mean, at that time, this eventually led to the collapse of the Qing dynasty, and a lot of reform-minded Chinese intellectuals, they they would blame Qing dynasty for this. They would see that they've kind of failed them. But I don't know if the Qing dynasty, is still blamed for this. It seems like the blame has shifted more towards other countries. Like you don't want to blame the government, right, for what was going on,
Right.
because maybe then by extension, you don't want to blame the current government for any problems. It's a little bit easier to kind of shift the blame onto other countries.
And this is what China's been doing right now under the leadership of the CCP, because CCP implies that CCP is the right ruler of China, just like the other dynasties before, and all of them are Chinese dynasties. So and every time something bad happened, it was because of some foreign forces or something unfair and humiliating happened to them. I didn't deserve it, and Yeah, this is happening now. This is Chinese nationalism.
Yeah,
This Chinese nationalism,
yeah.
and today's Chinese government emphasizes these feelings and keeps them alive in Chinese people. Like imagine, like the Europeans would be still hating, I don't know, Germans because of the Second World War.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
It's not.
So why do Chinese hate Japanese, or why do they still talking about 100 years of humiliation?
It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, for example, if you look at Japan specifically, they have been maybe less apologetic about this than Germany. But the funny thing is, when China would need money and new technology, and let's say at the end of the 1970s and 80s, the cooperation with Japan was great. So it's convenient for the government to use these kinds of nationalistic feelings whenever they can, right? I mean, why would they
Yes,
fight against it? Let's shift
whenever it can. Like
blame
the
to other
COVID,
countries.
COVID, COVID came from America or from any other country, not from China. I believe that 50% of Chinese people, if you ask them, where did COVID come from, they would be saying like, oh, it's what's America or something. They unbelievable, unbelievable. Anything like when there are floods somewhere, or dam breaks, or there is some flooding, and thousands of people die, and officially China covers everything, and already always just publishes some ridiculously small numbers how many people died. And and recently China started blaming all these floods on the global warming. And global warming, everybody knows in China, because of the emissions, that Americans, the CO2 emissions
Oh, so
that
it's
America
not
is.
it's not China. Well, then how do you explain if you look at the amount of small particles in the air? How do you explain that? You know?
No, forget about it. Forget about it. Because the important is you have to sometimes to plant a seed. Plant a seed in people's minds. You just
And they
mention
will
it.
find the answer,
You know,
and then hope
look
they will
at
they will make a conclusion on their own. Yeah.
never ever blame the Chinese government for nothing. Mandate of heaven, very strong. And the CCP cares about the mandate of heaven.
Well,
They
I
care
mean,
about it a lot.
maybe they used to. I don't know how relevant it is anymore. But you did see, for example, at around the time of Mao's death in 1976, there was a huge, a very destructive earthquake in Tangshan. And some
Uh-huh.
people are thinking, maybe the
Right.
Communist Party is kind of losing their grip on power.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah,
No?
these ideas would still be alive in people's heads.
Yes,
I
they
don't I
are
don't know
alive.
to what extent they are still, but
Yeah, right, right, right. hmm Right, right.
let's
So,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so look at all the what China, how China is actually changing the history of the, not only the history of the mythical dynasty Xia, but China is not shy to go even further.
Well, let's take a look. I mean, what can we see here in this?